Here we are, still going on with our series celebrating 140 years. Would you believe it? C140, Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. Now, one name, if you're in a transport shipping business, comes up time and time and time again in Suffolk, is the name Challenger. And I thought it was just a name of a company. Actually, it's the name of the bloke. Charles Challenger's with me now. It's a big name in the county. People know you.
Oh, thank you very much, Rob, for that. It's a privilege. It's a pleasure to be asked by the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce to be part of the interview session on the C140. So I'm really glad and pleased that I'm able to contribute my experience living here and working in Suffolk, and also socializing and my spirituality that I enjoy so much with these various religious groups here in Suffolk.
Yeah, you're very involved in the community, and this is what Chamber's about. It's involved in the community, involved in business, and celebrating 140 years. Take me back to the beginning of Challenger Shipping, because I've heard some great stories. We can only do a few of them today. So how did it all start?
It all started after I was made redundant from Burton, Son and Saunders. Adding to that, obviously in the community, I was doing community work. I was quite well known and obviously already partly involved in helping and advising people who wanted was to send various goods back to the Caribbean. So when after I was made redundant, the ideal opportunity arose where I was able to just go straight back into the community. It was a market that I knew very well, I could work with, and it worked quite well for me. The biggest snag for me at that time was Suffolk was small at that time in in its in my customer base. So therefore, the biggest challenge was to obviously look at how would I then be able to grow and develop outside of Suffolk.
Yeah, Suffolk was almost unheard of then. People didn't know where Suffolk was. It was out somewhere in the east. They confused it with Surrey and Sussex and that sort of thing. It needed to be established. But your links with the Caribbean, that's what pushed you forward, wasn't it? Because you've got connections there. Obviously, that's where you're from. So you were talking about people sending goods to the Caribbean. What were you dealing with at the time?
Well, there was numerous amount of goods that people wanted was to send to the Caribbean, and that basically was personal effects in the sense of people would get small containers or boxes or whatever they could get to export their goods, maybe a small crate, tea chest, etc., etc. So this is where people would go into the ordinary supermarket. They would purchase items from the supermarket, and they would gather a parcel of various goods for those individuals. So yeah, the market grew, it developed. Going back in the 80s, where a lot of people gained redundant, they were living in this country for many years, and obviously they were now building houses to return to the Caribbean.
Your business phone is going, but we're going to carry on because you're a busy man, and I don't want to interrupt your trade today. So all that going backwards and forwards, you were like you said, well, I know I can help you. I will sort it out. But that's an idea. So how did you turn it into a business then?
As I said earlier on, I was made redundant. The reality was that I've always had this ambition to run my own business. Be mindful there around that my family in Antigua were business people, and obviously due to economic downturn from my father was a farmer and he also ran a grocery shop. My mother was a seamstress and she used to make clothing on a small scale for individuals. So I believe coming from that background and engaging with the activities that I knew happened in Antigua, it really elevated me to take this. My ideal opportunity was to go out there, test the market, and work with the market the best I can, and it worked for me.
So entrepreneurialism came from your parents. That was in the family. That was what you knew, what you were good at.
Correct. That's so much true, and I also extend on that. On my mother's side and father's side, they were both business people. So obviously that energy was already there. And just briefly touching back, and I'm now going back to perhaps say the early 40s when my father was trading directly with London traders in sugar and cotton.
So how did that develop so quickly? Because you started off in a small way. You were helping people, almost sending like packages away. But then Challenger Shipping got big. What was the product that made you develop?
It made me develop through the downturn of the basically the Berlin Wall fell. Um, the Russians were trading with Jamaica bauxite for larder cars on a barter basis because Jamaica and the United States went through a period of great, I should say, they were looking to develop their country. And the United States, being so close, was not giving Jamaica favorable deals. So, of course, Jamaica then looked beyond its shores and developed this barter trade with the Russians. Of course, then, after the Berlin Wall was torn down and the Americans and the Russians were working, obviously the Jamaicans had a lot of larder cars, but there was no parts. In the UK back then, if we're looking at sort of the 70s, the early 80s, there was lots of larder cars that was in the UK also because we trade larder cars. And so therefore, there was lots of people now getting rid of larder cars. And obviously there was lots of second-hand, very cheap larder cars and different traders in the UK and Jamaica begin to buy those second-hand cars and turning them basically into a trade. And that is what I saw
And
the opportunity.
this is where it becomes interesting. It becomes amusing. You become very cunning because to export larder cars I see the smile on your face now. To export larder cars to the Caribbean, huge tax on it.
Yeah.
So you thought, well, I can chop cars in two. It's almost this, isn't it? Chop them in two and send them across.
Right, okay. When we say chop them in two, I mean, that's a thing that I always look back on how we didn't literally chop them in two because that meant we would have had to develop a new set of working practices to get these cars out. So what we literally did, we took the doors off, we took the bonnet off. We kind of produced an export product or goods in a way that when it arrived in the country, it would not be seen as a finished product.
So what you've done is an IKEA flat pack almost, isn't it? You here's the car, but it's not coming. It's not coming complete. The wheels and the doors are all separate.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly,
wow.
exactly. And obviously, we add other bits and pieces to it, and obviously the other way around it too was to really create where different parts were going in different containers so that the system could not pick up that these people are jumping ahead of us, yeah, and so therefore we were able to develop this market and trade larder cars in Jamaica for spare parts. And we also did it in other areas of the Caribbean.
Now, there's so many more stories to come out. We need more on this. So, how do you work with the chamber today? What does it do for you, and what do you do for it today? Because it isn't just it's what you can get out of it and give as well, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, Suffolk Chamber, for me, I go back a long way, and I'm going back in its early days at Commercial Road, Foundation Road, and hence it's just been relocated at the Suffolk University. And that relationship that I had with Suffolk Chamber was very, very helpful because it helps to get you in areas in the export market. The world is a larger place, is a very large place, and it's also complex with trade rules, regulations, health certificates, and other aspects of export. It's not just simply going down the road and speaking to a car dealer, you purchase it and you bring it home. So yeah, the chamber makes those connections for us, and I think it's so important for us to support the chamber in the work work that it's doing to give us that export market, to help us to pay for our National Health Service, to help us to pay for our teachers and police and all the other services that sometimes we take for granted.
We also take for granted the Suffolk itself. I mean, you talk about Suffolk. Well, we were talking about at the beginning that Suffolk wasn't very well known. It's well and truly on the map now, and still a big centre for international trade.
Of course, again, I mean, look at how Felixstowe has developed and expanded, in its operation. Yesterday I was in Essex, and just getting out of Ipswich, going over the Orwell Bridge, and we see the challenge. You see the number of articulated transport moving and coming into the town. So I've always considered us as that, Suffolk, that trade link between the rest of the world and ourselves here in the UK.